Hi! Now it's time to do some guided practice based on the second part of direct and indirect object pronouns. Let's get started. In this exercise, you'll have to translate the following sentences into Spanish. I need to ask her something. We can answer the question to whom, and we can answer the question what. For that reason, we know that there are two objects. Le necesito preguntar o le necesito pedir algo. We're using le because as we have two objects, the translation of her is le. Another option is necesito preguntarle o pedirle algo. We know that when we have two verbs, like in this case, need, necesito, ask, preguntar, we have two options. We can put the pronoun right before the first verb or immediately attached to the second verb. They allow him to be here. Him answers the question to whom. And what do they allow him? To be here. This answers the question what. For that reason, we know that this sentence has two objects. So the translation of him would be le. Le permiten estar aquí. They admire him. We can answer the question whom. So we have one object. So the translation of him, in this case, is lo. Lo admiran. I hug her all the time. To hug is abrazar. How many objects do we have? Well, I can answer the question whom do I hug? Her. We have only one object, so the translation for her when we have one object is la. La abrazo todo el tiempo. But what about all the time? Well, all the time is not really an object. Objects answer the questions what, whom, or to whom. All the time answers the question when, so it's not an object. And again, as we have here one object, the translation of her is la. I send her emails. How many objects do we have? One, I can answer to whom do I send the emails. And also I have the answer for what. What do I send her? Emails. So I have one object, two objects. For that reason, for two objects, the translation of her is le. Le envío emails. When we have two objects, one is always a person, and the other is an object, an idea, a thing. In this case, we can clearly see that this is the person, and this is the thing, the emails. You bother her a lot. To bother is molestar. First, let's identify the number of objects. We have her, whom. Whom do you bother? Her. A lot. Is a lot an object or not? No, it's not. Her, when we have only one object, is la. La molestas mucho. When there is only one object, we call it direct object. This is not really important if we consider the number of objects, but for future explanations or if you read mostly other sources, you will find that there is always a direct mention of direct and indirect objects. So in cases like this, in which we have only one object, well, this object is called direct object. Regarding this, a lot is not considered an object because it doesn't answer the questions what, whom, or to whom. Actually, it answers the question how much. How much do you bother her? Well, a lot. So this is not an object. She buys you food. Some important thing to note, this is a formal situation and we are talking to a man. She buys you food. How many objects do we have? To whom? Well, she buys you food, one object. And what? What does she buy you? Food. So we have two objects here. So when we have two objects, you is translated as le. Le compra comida. Again, it's formal. That's why the translation is le. Le compra comida. And for those interested in the grammar jargon, when we have two objects, the thing, in this case food, is called the direct object. And the person is called indirect object. So this would be indirect object, this is the direct object. With this analysis that I teach my students, this is not really that important. It's not really important to know if they are direct or indirect. We just count the number of objects. I think it's much easier and gives you the same results with less effort. She shouldn't give them that. How many objects do we have here? One, whom, or to whom, and that in this case, what shouldn't she give them? Well, that is a pronoun in this case. It's standing for something, but this stands for an object, so this counts as an object. So this is the person, indirect object, the object, direct object. And now, so the translation for them, in this case, them, when we have two objects, is les. No les debería dar eso. And as we have two verbs, we have another possibility. No debería darles eso. Remember, when we have two objects, we use the le variant. Le, les. I need you with me. In this case, you are addressing a man, and it's a formal situation. How many objects do we have? Well, we have whom, we can answer that. So we have one object. With me is not an object. Objects only answer the questions what, whom, or to whom. In this case, we are asking who with whom. So for that reason, we do not consider this an object. We cannot twist this. It has to be very specific. They have to answer what, whom, to whom. Other than that, it's not an object. It's formal. So we see we have one object, only one object, and it's formal. So in this case, we would use this. But we're talking to a man, so that rules out la. So this is the one we need. Lo necesito conmigo. And for those grammar lovers, this set of objects, lo, la, or los, las, are called direct objects. I will give her her medicine. How many objects do we have? Well, we have her, answers the question to whom. Her medicine answers the question what. So we have two objects. When we have two objects, we know that her is translated as le. And when it's a person, we call it indirect object. When it's a thing, we call it direct object. Le voy a dar su remedio. Also, we can say su medicina. Le voy a dar su remedio, su medicina. And as we have two verbs, we have another possibility. Voy a darle su remedio, o voy a darle su medicina. One more thing that we have here is that lo, la, and los, las are called direct objects. Le, and les are called indirect objects. Now, how about the translation of this? Well, when her or him express possession, we translate them as su. And this is the end of guided practice number 1. Get ready for guided practice number 2.